Only 3 weeks left in the college football regular season. Week 12 is here. We are doing our best with this schedule to find some games to talk about, but you know what that usually means? The potential for upsets is huge. Later on the show, we'll have some for you. Not to brag, but I'm 13-7 against the spread and 8-12 straight up on upset alert picks this season. This is Always Talking Ball with Tyler Noe and Lance Barton. And ladies and gentlemen, a bit of an announcement here. This is our 100th episode of the podcast. What do you got to say about that, Lance?
100. Okay, man. Hey, started from the bottom. Now we're here, bro.
Yeah, buddy.
It's just amazing. When you and I started this venture, a little over a year ago, last football season is when we started this in August with our some of our season win totals episodes, and just two dudes, a couple dads here that are just good buddies that have a share of passion for the sport of college football that have grown this thing to what it's become. We appreciate all of you that listen and follow and subscribe. And obviously, this thing would not have grown without you guys. So we hope you'll keep joining us. Again, we're just passionate about the sport of college football and love this sport, love talking ball. Love complaining about the CFP rankings alongside with you and just breaking down matchups and winning some best bets. And like I said, 3 weeks in a row, we have been in the green there. So hopefully we can continue that. But this has been fun, man. Let's keep it rolling. Can't wait till I can't wait till you're saying this for episode 200.
I know, man. We're extremely proud of that. Huge thank you again to all of you guys who over the past 100 episodes helped us grow over these last 15 months. Also, quick note, sorry if I sound worse than Reese Davis at a Cal game, but a virus is currently ripping my household to shreds. But I'm still here. I'm still here for you, always down to talk ball through sickness and in health.
Dude, look, hey, I don't mean to cut you off, but look, man, your boy here had double pink eye and a virus a few weeks ago. And like I said, man, lock them gates. We strap up. We'll strap up the chin straps and go. These injury reports that you have coming out and all these dudes, questionable and doubtful. We're never questionable or doubtful here, guys. We're always probable on the injury report here. Tyler can barely talk, and he's here to talk ball with us today. My boy's toughing it out. So, bear with him. And, again, if you listen to this and watch our show, you know very well I have no problem with talking a little more. So I'll let it rip today, and I hope it save Tyler's voice a little bit. But he'll always be dropping some nuggets and some knowledge for us today.
Yeah, he's gonna need to fill that void on talking, and you'll hear me coughing throughout the episode. So I apologize for that, and taking some sips of tea and whatnot. But to get us started off, we're gonna put a bow on some playoff rankings thoughts. We've had almost 48 hours now to marinate on just the rankings, and obviously, we're still upset about Miami being where they are, kind of first and foremost. And honestly, we're really upset about the inconsistencies as a whole. And this is really nothing new. It's kind of funny. I mean, me and it's nothing new. It seems like SEC fans, a lot of them, it's something new to them that this doesn't make any sense. Well, yeah, you guys haven't had to worry about it. You're going to get a champion in that 14 playoff. Well, now it's all about how many teams you get in the playoff. So now they're paying a lot more attention to, well, why are they putting them here? Why are they doing this? That's just the name of the game with the committee, man. It's par for the course. It's just kind of how it's been, unfortunately.
Yeah, I just think that most people, including me, man, I really did. I had hope that this committee would really look at strength of schedule more than what they have, and to get away from the archaic mindset of it's all about least amount of losses. Because not all schedules are created equal. Not all conferences are created equal. I know there's got to be some sort of a balance in there somewhere. I get it. You can't just put 7 SEC teams in. I'm a fan of an SEC team, and I know the tired sayings that other fans of other conferences are tired of, hearing SEC fans say of, like, for example, that's already started South Carolina, they'd win the ACC. Maybe they would, maybe they would. But, there's also teams in the SEC that have lost to opponents from other conferences. I mean, it's happened this year. I mean, LSU lost to USC at the beginning of the season. That's just one right off the top of my head.
Arkansas lost to the worst team in the Big 12.
Right, yeah. Arkansas lost to the worst team in the Big 12, Oklahoma State. I mean, Notre Dame went to Texas A&M and beat Texas A&M. So, I mean, they do lose some games, okay? So I get it. But I am frustrated with it doesn't look like that they are rewarding strength of schedule as much as they probably should. There's got to be a balance there somewhere. The reason why I'm more frustrated about it is because, I mean, dude, me and you are fans of this sport just as much as we are sitting here doing this. I mean, the reason why we're doing a podcast is how big of a fans of we are of the sport in general. I mean, yes, we're fans of our respective teams, but we're just as much or more so fans of the sport. And we all want to see the best teams in the sport match up against each other. That's the most entertaining thing we get to see. We want to see Oregon match up against a Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, whatever. We want to see Ole Miss and Ohio States and those type teams match up. That's what we want to see. But we're going to get less of that in the regular seasons if the committee continues what they've done through this. We're only 2 weeks into this, but if when on Selection Sunday, if they are just rewarding teams for having the least amount of losses, that's going to be tough, man, to convince these coaches and these athletic directors and these universities and programs to not schedule tougher. But where it's broken, you brought this up the other day, Tyler, where all of this is broken. Take college basketball, for example. College basketball has it figured out. They've got the quad system. They do reward you for strength of schedule. You could have 14 losses in a 30-game season, and if you play a jam-up schedule and play tough teams in non-conference, there's a good chance you're still going to make the NCAA tournament and get a chance to compete for the championship of that sport. We get the Duke versus Kentucky that we saw the other night. We get a lot of these matchups in college basketball that we all want to see. And then they go play conference play. Granted, they have a lot larger schedule to be able to do that with more games than they do in football. But still, they've got it figured out. They do reward you for that. And in football, they just flat out don't. And it's been that way for a long time. But you pointed this out the other day, man, at some point, they do have to take a look at, it can't be just like everybody keeps pointing out resume or just pointing out strength of schedule and stuff. It's got to be a balance of eye test and common sense and things like that. We're using Texas, for example. Yeah, we know Texas's resume isn't good. We've said that a billion times on here. But it doesn't take a brain surgeon to look at Texas and know they're a really good football team and they're one of the 12 best teams in college football. Are they the third best team in college football? Maybe not. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. Ohio State's resume doesn't warrant them being the number 2 ranked team in the country right now. But knowing that team and that roster and how good they are with your eyeballs when you watch them play on defense and offense, etc., that's one of the 12 best teams in college football. It can't just be only resume and that's it. That can't be just that. Because if that were the case, why even have a committee? Why even have that? So, I mean, you pointed that out the other day, and I do agree with that.
Yeah, and I think it'd be one thing comparing Miami and Georgia if Miami had a season like Indiana where they were just beating teams by 2 touchdowns a game and they just look better, because we all know Georgia just has not looked like Georgia this year.
Yeah,
the Georgia we're used to seeing. So again, though, but if you're going to do that, you got to be if that's going to be your criteria, you got to be consistent throughout your rankings. They change it up every 3 or 4 teams, every 3 or 4 spots of how it's almost like they put them in pods and they okay, out of these 4 or 5 teams, how are we going to rank them?
Yep.
And then these next 4 or 5 teams, how are we going to rank them? So
yep.
It gets to a dangerous game when you want to say, let's put in who, do we think Georgia is one of the 12 best teams in the country? Maybe. But we also thought that Ole Miss was better than Kentucky. All right. We also thought Notre Dame was better than Northern Illinois.
Yeah.
Your eyeballs tell you that, right? And so
that's why you play the game.
The game's got to be played.
Yep.
And we all know their unbalanced schedules in conference and out of conference.
Yep.
The Big 12 does not play the same schedule as the SEC. But everybody in the Big 12 doesn't seem to play the same schedule as other teams in the Big 12. That's where divisions we begged for no divisions forever, and we got away from that. And now we're kind of reaping not necessarily the benefits of that, because at least if you're in divisions like SEC West, for example, right? Alabama and LSU, they know they play at least 5 or 6 of the same teams every single year. Well, now, I mean, you got Texas playing maybe 2 of the same teams that Georgia plays. And maybe those are at home. And Georgia, I mean, Georgia's gone to Texas, Alabama, and Ole Miss this year, right? And so the unbalanced schedules are here. They're probably here to stay. I can't tell you whether or not the conference championships are going to be here to stay. It remains to be seen. But
let me tell you the quickest way to get rid of let me tell you the quickest way the conference championships go away. I think you would agree with this. You let the opportunity here where one of these 2 lost teams from the SEC is squarely in the playoff, and then they go play in their SEC championship game and don't make the playoff, and one of the 2 lost teams with the same exact record as them get in over them that did not make the SEC championship game. That is a way to completely blow this thing up, and like teams to be like, whoa, what's the reason to go play for our conference championship then? All that did was knock us out. Because that is a real possibility that we're looking at here. Another thing I wanted to mention was like after the fact when Ward Manuel, the commissioner, said when BYU and Indiana jumped up as much as they did after this past weekend, and his like reasoning was because they said they won big games this past weekend. They both played 5 lost teams. Like I know Utah's got a good brand and Michigan's got a good brand, but those 2 are not good football teams this year. Like you can make an argument that BYU and Indiana played the worst games they've played all year this past week, and they jumped them like they did multiple spots like that.
And that's another case of where they're just looking at brands. That's where even if you don't have a bunch of SEC teams at the top of the poll, that's still a case for brand bias. Like you're giving those teams. I mean, IU was a 14-point favorite, and they won by 5. BYU was a 3.5-point favorite. They won by 1.
It was significantly more impressive that Indiana went on the road the week prior and got down 10-0 to Michigan State, and then they scored 47 unanswered points on the road at Sparty. That was way more impressive. It was way more impressive that they handled Washington with Washington coming off a bye with Indiana with their backup quarterback like they did. Those were more impressive. But like you said, they seem to be more impressed because they beat Michigan. I wonder why Ward Manuel thought that. In case you don't know, Ward Manuel is the athletic director at Michigan. Just throwing that out. But the Miami thing was the most egregious thing to me. There were some other things I obviously didn't like either. But overall, I mean, I can't complain too much at this point. But they have really backed themselves into a corner. We'll get more into this next week. But if Georgia does beat Tennessee this week, and obviously those other teams win, like Alabama beats little old Mercer and stuff like that, that all happens. What are they going to do with that logjam of Ole Miss, Tennessee, Georgia, and Alabama? Because a lot of those teams, like Alabama beat Georgia, and Ole Miss beat Georgia, Tennessee beat Alabama, but Georgia beat Tennessee. So you may have a list in order of teams ranked, or teams that lost head-to-head are ranked ahead of the team that they beat, just like LSU and South Carolina in the back end of the ranking. Like they both had the same record. LSU beat South Carolina at South Carolina on the field, but South Carolina is ranked ahead of LSU. So that's going to be interesting when we see stuff like that.
Well, like I said, if you thought election and campaign season was done, you have not sat through a college football playoff last half of November where, I mean, it's already started. Rhett Lashley with ACC, stumping for the ACC. You know it's going to be coming from the SEC, Big Ten. I mean, they're all going to be doing it. They're all going to be stumping, trying to get as many teams in as they can. So
wait till if Georgia does beat Tennessee, Kirby Smart's post-game interview.
Oh yeah. I mean, Eli Drinkwood still thinks they got a chance at the playoff. So who knows? All right. So we were able to talk about all of that. Spend a little time here at the beginning of the episode talking about that because we've really only got one marquee matchup this week on the schedule. So it's time to get to our ATB marquee matchups brought to you by Home Field Apparel. Promo code at homefieldapparel.com is ATB15. That gets you 15% off at checkout. The big matchup obviously Tennessee at Georgia. Game day is going to be there. It's a 7:30 kickoff on ABC. Georgia right now is 9.5-point favorites. I gave out the pick on our live episode on Tuesday, and I took Georgia with the points. And I just think Kirby's going to have them motivated, including the postseason. Kirby is 32-18 against the spread against ranked opponents, covering by under 4 points a game. He's 13-6 as a non-road favorite of a touchdown or more, with a double-digit average cover margin. They've really, at least the past 2 or 3 years, they've really taken it to the Vols, and it hasn't been pretty. The Vols, though, I mean, they're coming off a long homestand. I mean, they had 4 games in a row at home in the middle of the season, which you don't really hear about that. But they go on the road to face Georgia, and typically teams don't mind getting away from home a little bit. Teams, after playing 4-game homestands to hit the road, they're 40-31 straight up. They're 42-26 against the spread since 2016. So what do you got here for Tennessee and Georgia?
Well, I mean, you hit the nail on the head as far as, for whatever reason, I mean, obviously I think it has a lot to do with that Kirby Smart's defenses have been elite for pretty much every year he's been there. This year, there's definitely been some cracks in the armor. But yeah, I mean, Heupel in Tennessee has not had success offensively against Georgia. Like 3 years in a row, it's been ugly. That Hendon Hooker team that they had a couple of years ago, their worst offensive output of the year easily was against Georgia when they played at Georgia in that game. So Tennessee's had better offenses than the offense that they have this year that have struggled. Mm-hmm. But I will grant that, like, you got to mention the flip side of that. That Georgia defense 2 years ago and last year and 3 years ago was a lot better than this Georgia defense right now. Georgia defense is still really good, but
you think Dylan Sampson could have success in the run game?
I do, if they stick to it. Yes, but that is something that Heupel has done this year. Like, we've been talking about the evolution of Heupel as a coach. Even last year, he was winning games last year, and we thought he was doing that because of who he had at quarterback with Joe Milton. He was kind of forced to try to win games with his defense and running the football, and he's obviously done that this year, even more so because his defense is his best unit on the team. That defensive line is the best unit on his team, and one of the best units in all of college football is that defensive line, and they're deep. So if they stick with it, and they're allowed to stick with it, meaning that Georgia doesn't somehow at home with all that emotion, they don't build a lead on Tennessee, and Tennessee is allowed to stick with it, I do think they can run the ball. But I'm going to have to believe it. I'm going to have to see it to believe it, man, to see a team for 4 quarters line up and methodically sustain drives and not hit shot plays and just sustain drives against this Georgia defense. Ole Miss did it last week.
I was going to say, is that not what Ole Miss
did it last week? But here's the difference. I mean, Ole Miss's offense and Jackson Dart and that offense, I mean, you can look at all the numbers. They're significantly better than this Tennessee offense by the numbers. Yeah. Now, their rushing offense, Tennessee is better at running the football than Ole Miss, quite a bit better. Tennessee is the number 1 rushing offense in the SEC. Fun fact, Georgia's the 15th out of 16 teams ranked rushing offense in the SEC. So I do think Tennessee can have some success running the football. But is that success meaning that they are able to drive down the field and sustain drives and score touchdowns and not kick field goals and things like that? I don't know. Like, it's, as well as I do, man, to beat Georgia and to beat the Kirby Smart defense and the best, most elite defenses in college football, you have to be able to throw the football eventually. Like Jackson Dart was able to do it last week for Ole Miss. Ole Miss's defense dominated that football game. That is obviously very capable of happening with Tennessee as well. But if Nico plays, we have no idea if he's playing or not. I'm not making it. My assumption is that he's going to play, but I have nothing about that. I mean, he's in concussion protocol and he's out there practicing. So I would imagine he's going to play, but I don't know. I'm going into this thinking he's
practicing.
Yes. I'm going into this thinking he's going to play. I thought about going into this with you about some conspiracy theories and asking, I'll just go ahead and ask it. I've already had a few people text me this. Okay. Let's just say if they don't play Nico, Georgia wins. What's the committee going to do with Tennessee? And with Tennessee sitting there saying, well, our starting quarterback didn't play in that game. How do they handle that? Yeah, I know. That's why you're laughing, because it gets interesting when you think about that.
That's diabolical from the Vols right there.
It is. Now, again, I don't think that they would purposely like, oh, we're not going to play Nico just so we could. I don't think Josh Heupel would do that at all.
Yeah.
But again, when you're doing concussion protocol, man, that's a different, especially in today's college football and today's football in general. That's a very careful thing that they take into consideration now more than ever. So I mean, maybe he doesn't play, but I think he's going to play. I'm personally banking on it that he's going to play.
Yeah. What do you think we get out of Carson Beck this game?
I mean, man, you pointed it out weeks ago, and then I finally jumped on board with you even before the Ole Miss game. I mean, he's just been bad, dude. And
credit to Moose from Walk On Red Shirts. He pointed it out back. I mean, before the season even
I was
started,
on that. I was actually on that episode with him when he said that, and I think I was the one that actually kind of challenged it a little bit.
Yeah.
But you're right, man. He was right. He was spot on. I thought he was crazy when he said what he said.
Yeah.
That he didn't think he was as good as what everybody thought, and he has definitely proved Moose right so far this year. So what do I think we get out of him? I don't think there's any way of knowing, man. I mean, what we have gotten is him being consistently inconsistent. So I would imagine that he's going to be inconsistent in this game. He'll probably make a couple of those just wow throws that he can make, same as Nico. Nico's consistently inconsistent. Both these quarterbacks are. Nico will make a couple of throws when somebody's running butt naked through the secondary wide open, and he looks like Joe Milton, overthrows him by 10 yards. And then all of a sudden he'll make a throw that you're just like, okay, there's that 5-star, top quarterback in the country coming out of high school. There's that arm. Carson Beck will make a few throws in the game that'll make you say, oh, yeah, there's that quarterback that was projected to be the number one quarterback in the NFL draft this year. And then he'll make 3 or 4 more decisions that you're like, oh, so there's the guy that everybody's completely dropped off the face of the earth when it comes to the NFL draft.
Yeah.
So I just think Georgia, to me, man, is Georgia's offensive line. Georgia's offensive line has to give him time. Like, he's not a runner. If he doesn't have time, just like any pocket passing quarterback, dude, he's going to throw picks, and he's not going to be good at all if they don't give him time. But that's not just him. That's any pocket passing quarterback. If you don't get time as a quarterback to survey the field and go through your progressions and try to find open people down the field, you can't do it. And Georgia's offensive line last weekend got worked by that Ole Miss defensive front.
Mm-hmm.
And while Ole Miss is number 1 in tackles for a loss and sacks in the country, I mean, Ole Miss's defensive front is also one of the 3 to 5 best defensive fronts in all of college football. That is the matchup. That is number 1 that I'm looking at. Can Georgia's offensive line, they don't have to dominate, but can they hold, because I don't think they can, but can they hold up? Can they hold their own? Because Tennessee forces so many negative plays for you, get you behind the chains. I mean, Alabama against Tennessee a lot of it was self-inflicted with a lot of those procedure penalties, but they were in 2nd and 3rd and long constantly. If Georgia's in 2nd and 3rd long against Tennessee constantly, yeah, dude, that offense is going to have trouble scoring.
Yeah. So does 2 consistently inconsistent quarterbacks lead you towards the under 48.5 in this game?
It does. It's a best bet of mine, actually. So I'll just go ahead and give that out. We have our best bet segment at the end, but while we're talking about games that we have best bets in, we throw that out. It does. And if you look at the numbers, too, of some of these games, I mean, Tennessee against Oklahoma, 25-15, 19-14 against at Arkansas, 24-17 against Bama, 28-18 against Kentucky, and 33-14. All those scores I just gave you, that's Tennessee we're talking about. What do those all have in common? They're all under 48.5. Mm-hmm. Georgia's game last week against Tennessee, it went under that key number of 48.5. Yeah. It's gone under. Georgia's gone under that number multiple times this year as well. I think both of these teams, it's so funny when you think of Josh Heupel again, man, thinking about this. Both of these teams want to lean on their defense in this game.
Yeah.
My thing with Tennessee, if I'm a Tennessee fan and I'm being realistic and I'm trying to think of like things that I'd be worried about in this game, I mean, offensively, Nico has been bad on the road, and he hasn't had very many road games. I think they've only had 2. Yeah, they've had 2 true road games all year at this point. At Oklahoma, they won 25-15. If you remember that game, Tennessee's defense set Tennessee's offense up multiple times deep in Oklahoma territory, and they still only scored 25 points in that game. But They knew that Oklahoma couldn't score. Heupel just ran the football, played defense. That's the way that game played itself out. They didn't try to light up the scoreboard in that game. And then when they played on the road at Arkansas, they only scored 14 points in that game. And Nico did not play well at all in that game. And they didn't turn him loose.
Yeah.
So do you think that they're just going to turn him loose at night in Athens against this Kirby Smart defense? I don't either. I think they're going to run the football. I think they think and believe that their defense can stop Georgia. And by the way, from what we've seen so far, why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't you believe that?
Yeah.
So I just think that there is nothing, man, as far as a game pick in this game. For Georgia to have success in this game, they have to stay ahead of the chains. They can't be in second and third and long. They need to be in third and medium, third and short. I mean, that's any offense that you would imagine, but especially against this Tennessee defense, it's even more so. And I believe that your defense is going to have the opportunity. I think both defenses are going to have the opportunity to possibly force some turnovers. Which offense can convert touchdowns and not kick field goals? I talked about that at the Alabama LSU game, that if Alabama can bend and don't break in that game, make LSU kick field goals, not score touchdowns, that's what happened early on in the game against LSU. Same thing in this one. I don't think it's going to be hard to sustain a bunch of drives. So who can prevent who from creating the explosive plays down the field, and who can make who kick field goals in the red zone instead of score touchdowns? Because I think points are going to be at a premium in this game. So nothing with my eyes this year. I'm going to get something I've been doing the last 3 weeks, man, with this game. I've been telling you that I've had success in the last 3 weeks on our best bets by just looking at matchups and going with what my eyes have been telling me and quit worrying about all the little nerdy stuff and all the trends and everything else. But dude, Georgia with their backs against the wall, just a bunch of angry dogs, pun intended, that have just been disrespected by the committee. You know Kirby's harping that up. And for whatever reason, Josh Heupel's offenses have already been having a ton of issues with Georgia to begin with. I do think that Tennessee is a completely different team away from Knoxville. They've shown that over the last few years, especially the last 2 years. They're really hard to beat in Knoxville, but they're not the same on the road.
Yeah.
Tennessee will have to prove it to me that they can go into Athens and win this game. I still believe in Nico, but he hasn't shown it to me yet this year. I've seen nothing from him that shows me that he's going to be able to go into Athens against this Georgia defense that's going to be like a bunch of sharks and blood-infested waters. I think this is just the definition of wrong place, wrong time for the Vols, and I think Georgia gets it done. I think they cover. Yeah. I'm even going to throw out a score prediction. I've got Georgia 27, Tennessee 13 in this game. So under 48.5 is a best bet, and Georgia minus 9.5 is also a best bet.
Okay. He's all in on this game, man. I mean, why not? It's the only good game of the week, right? So, like I said, it's our only marquee matchup we're talking about. We're going to hit a handful of quick hitters real quick. Let's talk a little bit about LSU at Florida. LSU, obviously, coming off that beatdown from Alabama last week. They moved all the way back to 23, 22 in the polls. And when Brian Kelly, as a head coach in college football, he's played 19 career games after getting blown out, which is at least 20 points. He's 12-7 straight up and 13-6 against the spread in those games, including 3-0 straight up and against the spread with LSU. So he's already lost by 20 plus points 3 times with LSU. I'm sure that's making those Cajuns very happy down there. And since 2017, LSU 6-1 straight up and 5-2 against the spread against the Gators, covering 4 in a row in that span. I believe the line right now is 4.5 for LSU. I don't know. I don't know where to begin here. Billy Napier's last stand, maybe. I don't know.
I mean, no more last stands with Billy Napier. He's back, baby. I
know. Not till 2025 are we going to be able to utter Billy Napier's last stand.
Don't you love it, man? The AD comes out and says he's back and all that, and then they go get beat by 100 by Texas.
And then they got issues with their basketball coach. That AD's having a real good time.
Good Lord, man. No kidding. But whatever. Their third string quarterback played at Texas. Like that's get at it. But I think this.
You think Lagway plays?
I was getting ready to say this line. When I first saw it, dude, I was immediately like, I'm about to just lay the wood on LSU. Like Florida with a third string quarterback, I don't care that LSU just got blown out by Alabama. Like that, there's no way Florida's not going to destroy Florida. I mean, LSU's not going to destroy Florida with Florida's third string quarterback.
Right.
But then I thought hard on it, and I said, well, this line says they think DJ Lagway is going to play. So he came out on the injury report as questionable, but Billy Napier did say that a lot of positive signs every single day so far with his return. I think he's going to play. Again, I don't know that. I have no knowledge, or I don't have any insider information or anything like that. I think he's going to play. I do think that Vegas would have this line different if they believed he wasn't going to play. Don't you think that they would not have exposed themselves to a line of -4 or 4.5 with LSU with a Florida with a third string quarterback?
Yeah, I mean, it's basically saying what, 6.5, 7 points neutral field. And I don't know if they're overreacting to LSU getting smoked last week. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think Lagway's going to play. And if he does play, it depends on how good his legs are. But I just think, like we said, like Brian Kelly can talk about, well, they've got a scheme to stop the QB run or whatever and blame his team. He shouldn't be doing that, but I don't necessarily disagree with him. I just don't think LSU's got the players on defense right now and the personnel. We talked about that our episode on Sunday that got released on Monday. That everybody wants to know what's wrong with LSU's defense. It's actually still better than last year's defense, which saying something. But personnel wise, they're just not very good defensively. And if Lagway can use his legs in this running game for Florida, who's actually looked pretty decent running the football the last few weeks for Florida, they can have some success against this LSU defense. I just don't know if Florida's defense can stop LSU's passing game. I don't know. That's where I don't know on this one. If you made me play it right now, I think I would take LSU. Maybe take Florida. If I know that DJ Lagway's playing and he is somewhat close to like 90 to 100%, I would say I would take LSU, but take Florida to cover the 4.5. So that's what I think is happening as of right now. So that's what I'm going to say. I'm going to say LSU wins this game. And I hope Lagway does play, because I think this could be a really good football game if he plays and if he's somewhat healthy. And it's interesting to see how LSU gets off the mat here. If LSU was completely out of any scenario whatsoever to make the playoff, I might be all over Florida in this spot.
Yeah.
But they're not. For those that don't know, LSU is still very much alive because they're in that 2-loss SEC team 2-loss logjam with like 6 teams right now. Their third loss was out of conference. So there's certain scenarios that aren't too far-fetched at all.
I mean, there's one that was tweeted out yesterday. If every SEC favorite wins the next 3 weeks, and then Arkansas beats Missouri, which they totally could.
Absolutely.
LSU would be in the SEC championship game versus the winner of A&M and Texas.
So to translate that, if chalk just flies, LSU is going to be in the SEC championship game. So there's a very realistic scenario that could happen. That's a doomsday scenario for the committee and for other conferences, for teams in other conferences. Or hell, 10-2 teams in the SEC. That's doomsday scenarios for them as well. But yeah, I think LSU wins this game. I think it's going to be a close game because I do think Lagway is going to play. I just don't think Florida's defense is going to be able to stop LSU's offense. And I think they bounce back here and get a W.
One more win to hit that over on the win total for Florida. I mean, I think we'll have a really good shot at getting it in Tallahassee.
We deserve it, bro. We deserve it. Because honestly, if DJ Lagway doesn't go down against Georgia, they really might have won that game. Yeah. I think even the most realistic Georgia fan would tell you that as well.
Yeah. Let's head out to Provo. Let's talk a little vampire football here. Kansas Jayhawks taking on the BYU Cougars at 10:15 Eastern. Lines dropped all the way down to 2.5. You got the number 6 team in the country against the 3-6 team at home, and they're favored by 2.5. Basically telling you that these two teams are equal on a neutral field. And that's got to just piss a lot of people off who are sitting behind number 6 in the college football playoff rankings. Against FBS foes, BYU head coach Kalani Sitake is just 8-15 against the spread as a home favorite of 3 or more points. So it dipped down below 3, but if it gets up to 3, and and he's lost 9 straight against the spread when it's around that area. Relatively low line, like I said, with the BYU undefeated at home this week. Teams that start 9-0 or better at home with a spread of under 6 are 15-5 straight up and 14-5 against the spread over the last 30 years. Get you lean a little Cougars there. But since 22, Kansas 2-1 straight up, 2-0-1 against the spread when listed as an underdog the week after winning as an underdog straight up. So when Lance Leipold beats a team like he did last week against Iowa State, he usually follows it up with a good performance. He doesn't follow it up with like a dud like some of these other teams do. So I don't have a pick in this game, man. I don't have a bet yet. But man, like the first thing I looked at was Kansas +3.
Yeah, you and I have been on this for a couple of weeks with the Jayhawks. And they are the team in the Big 12 right now that not a soul wants to play. And Iowa State found that out last week. And it's just funny because, like, the Big 12, like the main 3 or 4 teams down the stretch were Kansas State, Iowa State, Colorado, BYU. Kansas literally plays all 4 of them. Mm-hmm. They gave Kansas State their arch rival at Kansas State, who is death at home, and Chris Kleiman. They're death against the spread and death straight up at home. They beat everybody at home, basically. Chris Kleiman and Kansas State. Yep. And 10-point favorites, and Kansas lost that game by 2 points and had every chance to win that game.
Yeah.
Then they go play Iowa State and beat the brakes off Iowa State. I don't care what that. There's 46-35, 45-36, but that game was a spanking. Like Iowa State made a little bit of a comeback late. Now they're at BYU. Kansas is one of those teams that can score on every possession. Their offense with Jalen Daniels and that crew really is that good. So in BYU, 2 out of the last 3 weeks, they've had 2 of their worst performances of the year. I know it was their arch rival at Utah. Utah threw the kitchen sink at them in the first half. And then BYU ended up coming back and winning that game in the second half. But they didn't look good at home against Oklahoma State 3 games ago. Not at all. And then they went on the road to the bounce house at UCF and handled business at UCF, and they got the win at Utah. Folks, there's a reason why this line is what it is. And I'm going to tell you it's not because BYU is a bad football team. It's because odds makers know this Kansas team is good. They, for whatever reason, early in the year, they changed offensive coordinators. They were struggling a little bit offensively, and then out of nowhere, the last 4 games, they have exploded. Scoring 40-something points, high 30s, basically high 30s and in the 40s 4 games in a row. Let me ask you, do you think BYU can win a track meet?
Doesn't seem like it. I mean, I know they had that 38-35 win over Oklahoma State, but it seems like they really want to play with their defense first.
I agree. I haven't made it yet, but if I had to make a pick right now, I think Kansas wins this game straight up.
I think I might. I'm leaning there with you. I might just go Kansas money line here. And if BYU wins. Whatever. Let's have a little fun, right?
Yeah, but I think Kansas wins this game straight up. I haven't made it a best bet yet. It may make the card on our X page on Saturday. That gives us a good plug here. Follow us at AlwaysTalkBall on X every Saturday morning around 10 a.m. Eastern, 10:30 Eastern. We always give out our best bets for the week, and we've had some good success the last 3 weeks. So Kansas might make the card, but this has everything to do with Jalen Daniels and the Kansas offense. Can BYU get into a track meet against an elite offense like what Kansas has? Because they do. They've got 2 legit tailbacks, a really good dual threat quarterback. The problem with Kansas is Jalen Daniels is able to throw the ball 3 times to BYU. Yeah. So if that happens, BYU will win this game. But if Jalen Daniels can go turnover free or only have 1 turnover, I think Kansas wins this game.
Yeah, but once you get to mid-November, the pressure starts getting ratcheted up. You're sitting there at 9-0, playing a team with only 3 wins. You should beat them, right? You're favored in the game. Yep. Crazier things have happened, right? So, all right, let's talk about the second of only 2. Second ranked versus ranked matchup here. Mizzou traveling to South Carolina, the Battle of the Columbias. They got a rivalry for this or something like that, right? I
I'm
mean,
sure they do. They
Columbia
have
Trophy.
rivalry trophies and names for games all over the place now.
I don't know. Yeah. Um, this one's a 14-point spread. I think last time I looked, I did some research. Mizzou has pretty much owned this rivalry. I put that in quotes. Past 3 or 4 years, they've really taken it to South Carolina. But this year, we've mentioned this trend many times, and this is the only one it really fits with the SEC this year or this week. Road Dogs in the SEC conference games are 17-4-1 against the spread. And that's the best conference mark for Road Dogs through 11 weeks in the SEC since 1990. Drew Pine is at quarterback. Does he have any chance at all of pulling off, at least keeping it close, keeping it within 2 touchdowns against a surging South Carolina team here?
I mean, maybe their defense can keep them in it, but I mean, again, the two teams, the two best teams that Missouri has played, the only two good teams that Missouri has played. Dude, I saw something. Are they getting outscored like 75-10, I think, in those two matchups? I think it was like 75-10 is what Missouri got outscored by combined against Texas A&M and Alabama. So, I mean, Mizzou is beating the teams that they're supposed to beat, that they're favored against, and they're getting shellacked by the teams that they're not supposed to beat. And this line being at 14 just tells you how good South Carolina has been. I mean, we have talked about them for the last few episodes that they are that team that's sitting there at the back end of the rankings that if you were doing a power rating, they're one of the 15 best teams in college football right now. Again, South Carolina's got 3 losses, and 2 of those losses were a heartbreaker at Alabama and one against LSU at home that was also a heartbreaker that if their starting quarterback Lenore Sellers doesn't get injured, they probably win that football game. But in this one, I think Mizzou's defense can have a little success. But if Drew Pine is the quarterback, this one's ugly. This one's ugly. If Brady Cook can play, I haven't looked at the injury report. If Brady Cook can play and ends up playing in this one, maybe. But if he's not healthy, if Cook's not healthy, this isn't the game you want to throw him out there in against that pass rush for South Carolina and Dylan Stewart and Kennard coming off the edges in that defensive line for South Carolina. But South Carolina's hot right now, man. I don't know if they cover the 14, but I do think South Carolina wins this game. It wouldn't shock me if Drink and Mizzou and their defense, who's actually put up some decent fights against some other teams this year, if they they keep them in the game a little bit. But if Drew Pine's the quarterback, I just don't know how they're going to score.
Yeah. Let's head up to Madison, another primetime game, home game, where the Wisconsin Badgers are going to be facing a top 5 opponent.
Yep.
Got Oregon coming in there as 14-point favorites. And we're here to shower Dan Lanning with some love on this podcast because we're big Dan Lanning guys. Since the beginning of last season, Oregon 7-1-1 against the spread on the road. Dan Lanning's 12-2 straight up, 10-3-1 against the spread on the road with Oregon, covering by 6.5 points a game. You might ask, okay, well, how does he do as a big favorite? He's 23-0 straight up and 16-7 against the spread when favored by 14 or more.
Whoa.
Does this end up pretty similar to Oregon at Michigan, Penn State at Wisconsin, kind of like maybe keep it close for a second, but at the end, Oregon just ends up covering?
I think so, man. I mean, this falls in line. I think you were on Penn State with me against Wisconsin at Wisconsin. And a lot of people that I talked to and a lot of the quote unquote experts that, throw stuff out on games were all over Wisconsin that week. And all I kept hearing was Camp Randall at night. Nothing about the actual matchup of teams on the field. And I'm just going to point out that, let's see here. Alabama beat Wisconsin 42-10. We're talking about teams that have really good athletes and speed on the perimeter and are just more talented than Wisconsin. So Bama 42-10 against Whiskey. USC, I know they've lost games or whatever, but we know USC has athletes on the perimeter and can score. They beat Wisconsin 38-21, and Penn State beat them 28-13, and Iowa beat them 42-10. Their last game out. Their wins are against Northwestern, Rutgers, and Purdue as far as power, 4 wins and conference wins. So basically the worst teams in the Big Ten. So I guess this falls in line with Camp Randall at night. That's all. I mean, that's really all you can say. Can Wisconsin with, I think they're off a bye. They are. Can Wisconsin and Luke Fickell and Mike Tressel and that bunch and Phil Longo, who I do respect, that coaching staff, can they, with 2 weeks to prepare, come up with something to deal with this Oregon team? Oregon's going to have to play bad, man, and have to have multiple turnovers for Wisconsin to have a chance in this one. The speed and athlete differential in this game is insane. It's a lot like we talked about when Illinois went to play at Oregon. Some of these traditional Big Ten teams that are still behind speed and athlete-wise, Wisconsin's one of them. I just don't know how you keep up, man, with all the speed on the perimeter that Oregon has and the athletes that they've got across the defensive line. And Oregon's offensive line has been playing well. The only way that Wisconsin can stay in this game is Camp Randall at night and Oregon just crapping down their leg, turning the ball over. Dylan Gabriel throwing multiple interceptions. You have a couple of fumbles. Like, I'm thinking 3 or 4 turnovers is what Oregon has to have for Wisconsin to cover, much less win the game.
Yeah, I just think everyone talks about Camp Randall at night, and when they've got a good team, but there's just some teams out there who, regardless of how good of a team they have, their environments are, very, very tough to win in. I just think Wisconsin's not one of them, and they got to have a good team. They got to have good athletes. Not going to be able to get it done on Saturday night, unfortunately.
I don't think so either.
Let's talk a little Texas at Arkansas, a little old school Southwest Conference rivalry here. I think that Arkansas has kind of owned Texas past, 5, 6, 7 times they played, especially a couple years ago when they played. And big Sam Pittman, man, as an underdog, he's 22-10 against the spread, and he's 10-3 against the spread when catching double digits. And Texas is favored by 13.5 in this game. What you think Sam Pittman continues that against a spread streak, or does Texas make this similar to what Ole Miss did when they went into Arkansas and what LSU did when they went into Arkansas?
So I definitely think that matchup-wise, I went big on Ole Miss against Arkansas, and the reason was because we talked about how Arkansas's pass defense is, I think, second to last or last in the SEC. That's not good going up against Sark and Quinn Ewers in this passing attack from Texas. But the main reason I loved Ole Miss against Arkansas was, again, Ole Miss's ability to just wreck your offensive game plan and get in the backfield, and the ability to put pressure on Taylor Green. He's prone to turnovers. He's going to give the football up, whether that be fumble or interceptions, if you get pressure on him. Ole Miss did that, and that's exactly what happened. I guess hot take alert here. I'm just not sure, man, that Texas is as good as Ole Miss. I personally don't think they are. I think Texas is a really good football team. They're one of the 12 best teams in college football. But I don't know that they're as good as Ole Miss. I don't know that they can create the amount of havoc and pressure against Arkansas that Ole Miss did. So I wouldn't be surprised, man, if Arkansas does put up a fight here. I think Arkansas is off a bye, right? I think their last game they played was that just beat down that they took to Ole Miss. I haven't looked, but if Jaquindon Jackson is playing in this game at running back for Arkansas, he was one of the best running backs in the SEC, transfer from Utah. Then he went down with a little bit of an injury. It wasn't season ending. But if he they're coming off a bye. He didn't play against Ole Miss, and he didn't play the game before that. But if he's given it a go in this game and is somewhat healthy, I do think that old Bobby Petrino and the Arkansas offense can possibly stress this Texas defense a little bit. And also, crazy to say this again, Texas needs to kiss Greg Sankey right on his ass about this. That this is their second true road game in the Southeastern Conference, and the first one was at freaking Vandy, where if Tyler and I were Vandy fans, there were as many Vandy fans at that game as there was here on the podcast. So this is I'm going to say it, this is their first real, true road game.
Yeah.
And we all know how much hatred there is from Arkansas towards Texas. A lot of vitriol. Even Sark talked about it. Like he said, I don't know what Darrell Royal did in the past to hurt Arkansas's feelings so much, but man, those guys hate us. And he's right. And he knows that because his first year as coach at Texas, he was the coach of that team when that Texas bunch with Hudson Card went into Arkansas and got shellacked. So I do think Arkansas can possibly keep it within this number. But if the same pass defense and turnover prone Taylor Green shows up, it's probably going to be much of the same as you saw in the LSU game. And it's probably going to be what you saw, be a mixture of what you saw in the LSU and Ole Miss game. That big plays in the passing game for Texas because Arkansas can't stop the pass, and Taylor Green turning the football over. But if Taylor Green doesn't turn the ball over, I do think that Arkansas's offense can score some points and keep him in this game.
Yeah, I think Arkansas is going to hate Texas a lot more after this game because I think Texas is going to cover the 13.5.
Okay.
That's one of the bets I've made.
Hey.
Sam Pittman said they're holding open tryouts in the defensive backfield.
I did not know that.
Yes. That's how bad it's gotten.
Ooh.
I mean, you let Jordan Watkins score 5 touchdowns 2 weeks ago on you. That's just how bad it's gotten. I think that Sark is going to fire it up. They're going to throw some deep shots. I think Texas is going to be able to run the ball against Arkansas. I think Texas offense is going to be able to do whatever they want. Like you said, though, it's a matter of can they first and foremost stop the run. And I'm not counting on Taylor Green keeping the ball safe. He's going to turn it over. You know it's going to happen.
Yeah, pretty much. You can count on it.
It's a noon kick. I love road teams at noon, especially 11 a.m. local there. So I'm going to take the Longhorns minus 13.5 in that one. We talked about all the conferences except for the poor old ACC. And they didn't have any games within single digits on the spreads. But I guess their biggest game is probably Clemson at Pitt.
Yeah.
I mean, real quickly, you think Pitt has any chance against Clemson in that game? Without Eli Holstein, probably?
No.
Yeah.
Simple answer, no, I do not. I just think Clemson's defense is still going to be too much for the Pitt offense. I haven't really been a believer in Pitt much all year. I think Narduzzi's a good coach. I love me some Eli Holstein. But if Holstein's not playing, no chance. If Holstein plays, still tough. Still tough to handle that. But just an interesting nugget here with SMU. I thought about laying the wood, bro, with the ponies in this one because
Boston College.
Yeah, that revenge factor of SMU in the bowl game last year. Boston College got a little happy on the ponies in that bowl game. Jennings, the quarterback for SMU, actually played in that bowl game against Boston College as well. So you got to imagine SMU wants to get a little revenge factor here. And, Castellanos, the quarterback from Boston College, got benched last week. In today's world of NIL world and portal world, there's a prime example of Bill O'Brien trying to send a message, trying to get his quarterback, get his attention, benches him, and he just jumps in the transfer portal. So that's why you don't see a lot of accountability anymore with some of these players because they know that if they do that, they can just hop in the portal and go somewhere else whenever they want. So it wouldn't be a bit surprised to see SMU get all over Boston College in this one. But that's it, man, for us ACC.
Okay. Well, time to sound the alarm. We're going to put some teams on upset alert here. And we're going to see if we can continue this roll that we're on. I've only got one team to put on upset alert here this week. It's been a while since I've, talked about a military academy on here.
I had a guess this was going to be your upset alert.
Yep. It's I'm putting Tulane on upset alert. They just hopped in the college football playoff rankings at number 25. Okay. Anytime you get a team hopping in there for the first time, kind of get all fat and happy, you got to go to Annapolis and face off with only 1 week to prepare that Navy offense. And Navy's won 6 out of 7 against the Green Wave. Now, they haven't played in a couple of years, but they've won 6 out of 7 against the Green Wave. And Navy's catching 7 points in this game. I think there's a real shot Navy could beat them straight up, and I think that Navy plus 7 is a very, very good bet. I have not placed it yet, but I think Navy plus 7 is a really solid look.
Honestly, man, that was because, like, for those that don't know, again, I'll remind, upset alert is anybody that is getting more than 4 points. So 4.5 and more is how we make this list of upset alert. There just wasn't a ton again this week, but Tyler's been pretty hot this year on it. So I've not been as good. So take this with a grain of salt. I didn't have a ton either. Like, that was one that I thought about. But one that I found, I'm going to put Maryland on upset alert against Rutgers. We are all Shiano men against Sunge, the State University of New Jersey, getting 6.5 points in College Park, Maryland, against the Terps. Rutgers looked interesting year for them. They start out hot and looked really good, and then all of a sudden they just poop down their leg and look awful for about 3 weeks. And then they show up last week and beat Minnesota straight up. A good Minnesota team at home beat them straight up. And now they're going on the road to Maryland and catching 6.5 points. Maryland lost to Northwestern by 1 billion at home. Maryland is they lost by a ton to Minnesota as well. Honestly, I don't know that I don't even know that Maryland's a better football team in this game. So if I'm getting 6.5, I'll take my chances here. Maybe they cover the spread, but I think that Rutgers has a chance to win this game straight up against Maryland. So I'll take Rutgers. I'll put Maryland on upset alert against Rutgers.
Okay. Time to get to best bets. I've already said Texas minus 13.5 and Georgia minus 9.5. Those are the only two I have right now. Thinking about, I mentioned Navy plus 7. I mentioned Kansas plus 3. You and I were talking kind of like Washington at home on Friday night against UCLA. They're laying 4.5 right now. They've just been a different team at home than they have on the 100%. Road. And UCLA is playing really well, which shows you that this, spread is down to where it's at. So respect is coming in on UCLA. I just kind of like Washington in this old school Pac-12 matchup. I also kind of like Houston with the money line on Friday night. Only 1.5 point dogs at Arizona. Willie Fritz has got the Cougars playing really good ball down there. Looking at Illinois, possibly at home against Michigan State. Like Bielema in these late November games. And I think Illinois is just a more physical team there. Penn State minus 20.5 against Purdue. That's pretty much self-explanatory. Everybody's been doing that to Purdue all year. I don't think it matters home or away. So there's probably going to be 20 people in the stands at, Ross-Ade Stadium there in West Lafayette. So a couple I'm really looking at here. All right. Nebraska plus 9.5 against USC. I just have no faith in Lincoln Riley right now. And how about Matt Rule? Really just kind of saying, you know what? Screw this. Let's go balls to the wall with the offense. Let's bring in Dana Holgorsen.
Holgo is back in college football, baby.
To run the offense, man. What do you think of that move?
I love it, man. The dude can coach offense, okay? Like, I don't know how much of a head coach and CEO he really is, but the dude can coach offense. He had some really good offenses at West Virginia. Really everywhere he's been, man. And when he was an offensive coordinator before then, at some of his other stops, I was a really big fan of his over the years of what his offenses did. I just don't think the dude is necessarily a great head coach. But you put that guy with a headset on and let him just dial up some ball plays, he can coach. And there's a lot of talent on this Nebraska offense. Yeah. And I think that's why Matt Rule.
2 weeks to prepare.
Exactly.
Too.
I think that's why Matt Rule made this decision, man. Like, there really is. Like, Nebraska's got too much talent this year. This year's team, they actually do have some good athletes on the perimeter at receiver. They do have a talented 5-star, albeit true freshman, but still Raiola has shown he can make throws. And is a very talented live arm and is a really good quarterback, even for just a freshman. And they've got 2 or 3 good tailbacks. There's no reason that they should be as piss poor as they are offensively the last few weeks. So I think that's why Matt Rule made this decision. It's very obvious that Satterfield, the OC at the time, guy calling plays, was not doing a good job. So he made the move. I don't know, with 2 weeks to prepare on a never being coaching on this team at all, what it can do. I have no idea. But obviously USC, they've made a change as well. They've completely changed quarterbacks. And is it Jaden Mayav? Mayav, is that you say his name?
Yeah, Jay
Yeah,
Ayala.
transferred from UNLV to USC. They benched Miller Moss, so he's going to play in this game. A little bit more of a dual threat guy. So, yeah, I mean, it's his first start. Nebraska's defense is solid, especially that defensive front. So, yeah, that's not a bad pick, man. Maybe we should have put USC on upset alert with the Huskers.
I thought about it.
Yeah.
I just don't know if the Cornhuskers can get it done outright. But one more I'm looking at too is another. You're going to fade another team who's just been really struggling for the last 3 weeks, and looking at Cincinnati plus 9.5, going on the road and playing Iowa State. Iowa State last 3 games has failed to cover. They should have lost to UCF. They got ran out of the building last week against Kansas. They lost at home to Texas Tech. These Big 12 games too. It's like 9.5 points, man. That seems like way too much for a Big 12 game.
Is that your last one?
It's my last
All right,
one.
man. I appreciate it because this is what we call a lead. Like an assist. Tyler just alley-ooped me. He is correct. These Big 12 games at some of these lines are a little too much sometimes. I think Iowa State is going to win the game at home. Do I think they're going to cover? I'm really not sure. So your boy here is going to do something that is not what I'm not a professional bettor, but it's not what you should do in college football, but I'm going to do it anyway. And I'm going to give a little I'm going to call it, I'm going to give it a name too. America's Conference teaser of the week. I'm going to do a little 2-team teaser with 2 Big 12 games. I'm going to pair Iowa State minus 2.5 with Kansas State minus 1. So I need Iowa State to win by a field goal at home against Cincinnati, and I need Kansas State just to beat Arizona State basically at home. So, again, your America's Conference teaser of the week is Iowa State minus 2.5, Kansas State minus 1.
Beautiful.
Another best bet of mine is Kansas State minus 8. I'm going to take K-State minus 8 as well against the spread. I think Kansas State, they're really good against the run. Arizona State with Cam Scatterbo and that running game for Arizona State, that's what they want to do. They want to run the football. And I think Kansas State, again, matchup-wise, style-wise, styles make fights. I think the Purple Cats and Chris Kleiman's Kansas State squad gets it done and covers the spread against Arizona State at home in Manhattan. Again, Chris Kleiman, I don't have the numbers in front of me. Just take my word for it. They're really good at home. They cover the spread. They're a cover machine at home. They didn't cover their last game at home against arch rival Kansas, but again, they do a good job and cover most of their games at home and win straight up. So I'm going to take Kansas State minus 8 in that game. I am going to take a shot, and I'm going to try one more time to try to beat UCLA against the spread. They've beat me multiple times this year. They may do it again. But I'm getting a blackout at Husky Stadium on a Friday night with the Huskies coming off a couple of road losses, coming back at home. You alluded to it. They've been much better at home this year. I don't think they've lost at home this year.
5-0 straight, 4-1 against the spread.
There you go. There's the numbers. So I like the Huskies this week against UCLA. It currently is minus 4. I see a couple shops showing 4.5, but the most of your shops have minus 4. That's a fair line. So I'm gonna give Huskies minus 4. I already gave out Georgia minus 9.5, and I already gave out Georgia, Tennessee under 48.5 as best bets as well. Some other ones I'm looking at. I'm definitely looking at Kansas as a possibility. I'm absolutely looking at that as a possibility. And that's really all that I'm looking at the moment. So yeah, got a few of you guys out there to play with a little bit this week. But yeah, let's see if we can get in the green again this week, man. We've had 3 weeks in a row. See if we can make it 4 in a row.
Yep. We'll put out our picks on X on Saturday morning, like Lance mentioned. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Follow us on all social media. Listen to us on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. Share with your friends. Again, 100 episodes in the bag. We're ready for another 100. We love doing this. We love talking with you guys. Thanks for all the positive feedback and everything over the last 15 months. We'll be back on Monday morning to recap week 12 and to kind of look ahead to week 13 a little bit. So until then.